Good morning, Chair Vollendroff, Member Holmes, staff, and guests. The lobbies are open and the recording has begun.
Thank you, Deb. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board Caucus meeting for Tuesday, July 15th. Board Member Garrett is out on leave today, so we will jump right into our first agenda item. Today we have Dr. Jason Kilmer from the University of Washington joining us. Dr. Kilmer has joined us before and he is providing an update on the Washington State Young Adult Healthy Youth Survey. So Dr. Kilmer, welcome. Looking forward to hearing from you again today, and we'll let you present, and I don't know, let us know early on whether you want questions along the way or save them to the end. Either way is fine this morning.
Thank you very much. I really want to respect your meeting time. I'm happy to take questions as we go. I know I only have until 10:20, so I will pause when there are logical spots to pause, see what questions folks have, and make sure I end on time. So
Great.
To me, the biggest challenge of the day is making sure I know how to share my screen on Teams, since we're largely on Zoom all the time.
So far, so good.
And whoops, I lost it. So I have to stop sharing. It lets me either see the screen or all of you, but not both. All right. Here we go. I hope you can see my whole screen now.
We're good.
Fantastic. I won't touch anything. So this is 11 years of data from our Young Adult Health Survey, which launched in 2014. We're in our 12th year of data collection. That to me just is both from a data standpoint really cool, but it's also amazing that we've had this much involvement. The people we met as 18 to 25-year-olds in 2014, we've literally followed now and worked with for over a decade, which is really, really great. Before we get started, just to thank you to our partners at the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery, Sarah Mariani, Casey Cates, and Rachel Oliver. And thanks too for the folks in your office, Dr. Sarah Oki and Kristen Haley, who I had met with and actually talked about today's presentation, Chair Vollendroff, and also Gretchen Frost. Our project, the Washington Young Adult Health Survey, different from the Healthy Youth Survey that 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders get, is to 18 to 25-year-olds in Washington. It's been funded by the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery. We have a small but mighty team at the University of Washington, and you see everyone listed here. I've presented on this before because I only have a 20-minute window. Just a reminder of the main steps. We collected as much data as we could before retail stores opened in 2014. And the participants recruited using a combination of mail to a random sample from the Department of Licensing, as well as online advertising. We use social media. From the get-go, this has always been the intent because we realized there were limitations solely to using people recruited from the Department of Licensing database. And when we use social media, we can assess demographics on an ongoing basis. And when we need to turn up the dial in advertising in certain regions for certain groups of people to make it as representative as possible, we can do that. So it is a convenient sample, not a random sample. Yet, to improve generalizability, we use post-stratification weights based on sex assigned at birth, on race, and geographic region. And we're always happy to make clear that the weighted results consistently are very similar to the non-weighted results. Every year, we collect data from a new cohort of 18 to 25-year-olds. With last year's data collection, we now cleared 20,000 unique participants, which, again, to me, I'm amazed by that. And we follow up with each cohort, the previous participants. So in 2024, we followed up with each of the previous 10 cohorts. The people we met as 18 to 25-year-olds in 2014 were largely 28 to 35 when we collected data from them in 2024. So what do we see with 11 years of data? There's a lot going on these slides, and I will walk you through these. You're going to see a very clear pattern to these. I'll also send a PDF of the handouts if it helps for your note taking. But you've got any past year non-medical. Oh, go ahead. I see a hand up already.
Yeah, I just have a quick question, and maybe it's going to be in this slide that's got a lot of information on it. But just going back to your follow-up rate, you follow up with all these folks. What is the follow-up rate for your past cohorts?
It depends on the cohort itself. There are some years that we've had to pause due to budget restraints. So depending on the cohort, we have a different participation or follow-up rate. Usually the ones that are the farther away they get, the more we saw some attrition over the 12 years or
Right.
11 years as it may be. So for each of those 11 cohorts, I'd probably have to pull it up to take a look. But usually it's pretty good. They
You're
know
still
us.
talking though to folks in from 2014, a certain percentage of those folks.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is any past year recreational, non-medical, personal use. I know on Zoom, when you hover your cursor, you can see where the cursor is. I don't know if on Teams you can see that, but you see in columns, each of the cohorts. In rows, you've got 18 to 20-year-olds, 21 to 25-year-olds, and then the total. And then we have the significance tests. Cohorts 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 all had a higher rate of past year use than cohort 1. When we do a deeper dive into any trends, there's a significant linear trend, meaning for 18 to 25-year-olds, in general, any past year use has been significantly increasing. There's a significant age by cohort interaction. And so when we do a deeper dive into this, you see highlighted in magenta anything that is a new finding. For the first time in all of our years of data collection, there's a newly significant decreasing trend among 18 to 20-year-olds. The 21 to 25-year-olds, it's a significant increasing trend. So we have historically said that overall use is going up within the frequency of people reporting past year use is going up among 18 to 25-year-olds. And when we've done a closer look, it's been the 21 to 25-year-olds largely driving that because there was a significant increase for them and no significant change for the 18, 19, 20-year-olds. That's changed for the first time. With 11 years of data, any past year use by 21 to 25-year-olds is significantly going up. Any past year use is going down for the 18 to 20-year-olds. And if you're more of a visual person, you can see that in 2014, there was no difference by age group. There was literally no difference. And then the 21 and 25-year-olds, those with access to a legal market, you can see represented in orange, that significant trend is increasing. Then in blue, that significant trend is decreasing for the 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I can go a little more quickly now that you've oriented yourself to these slides. When you look at least monthly non-medical use, cohorts 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 all have a percentage, as well as 11, all have a percentage higher than cohort 1. All of those are significantly different. There is a significant increasing trend for 18 to 25-year-olds. And as we've seen in past years, that significant increasing trend seems to largely be driven by the 21 to 25-year-olds, because for them, that increase is significant. For the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, there is no statistically significant trend. To show it graphically, you can see what that looks like over time. When we look at least weekly, cohorts 7, 8, and 10, higher than cohort 1, you see a significant increase in terms of a trend for 18 to 25-year-olds. There's a newly non-significant age by cohort interaction. We still split the model by over and under 21, and we can see, depending on which statistical approach you use, it is largely the 21 to 25-year-olds driving that overall increase. And if you wanted to look at that graphically, that's how it looks graphically. So as best as I could go through the frequency categories, you've seen the frequency categories. Chair Vollendorf, I will take your question.
A quick question, and I think I know, well, I do know the answer, so this is partly for Member Holmes and for other people who are listening, but I'm wondering, can you just slow down enough to tell us, and let me just back up and say we've got a little extra time. Do you have a few extra minutes if we go a little bit over this morning?
Of course, I just was committed to the end by 10:20,
Okay.
so.
Okay, I think we're good. But so can you talk just a little bit about why? So we've done the healthy youth survey for a long time, and then we started doing the young adult survey. Why do we do this? And then what are the specific concerns, or what are some of the things we should take into consideration around this trend of the 21 to 25-year-olds increase in use? And what, so what are we looking for, or what kind of concerns should we have based on that?
I mean, I can answer the first one very easily, which was, as you note, we have data for 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders with the Washington Healthy Youth Survey. We have in other national data sets data for adults in general. When you look at the National Survey on Drug Use and Health and you look at cannabis rates, 18 to 25-year-olds without question, are the age group that tend to report cannabis use at rates higher than people 26 and older and people under the age of 18. So they do tend to be the group that is more at risk or higher risk in their use. And they were a group that we really weren't collecting data on in Washington. So particularly given the data surrounding 18 to 25-year-olds, the need to be able to assess that with that age group really became clear. The opportunity when we look at 18 to 25-year-olds, and one of the things we have the opportunity to look at with the longitudinal cohorts, is what happens when people turn 21. So with the legal age for access to retail cannabis in Washington being 21 and older, there's a logical split in our data to be able to take a look at 18, 19, 20-year-olds and compare that to the 21 to 25-year-olds. When you ask about, what do we need to be aware of? Groups and work groups much larger than simply me have looked at what do we need to be aware of, and I was one of the working group members on a team of researchers from the University of Washington, Washington State University, and also partners in state agencies in Washington that looked at risks that people under 25 might face, and we see that around everything from risk of substance use disorder to impacts on cognitive functioning to mental health issues as well. So it is an age group very worthy of our time and attention, and I hope that briefly answers that question.
Yeah, and Sarah, I see your hand up, and I just want to ask one follow-up question, and that is, and maybe you can't answer this, Dr. Kilmer, but I'm wondering, is that increase starting at age 21, I mean, how much of that's related to the fact that it's now legal for them? And would we see something similar with alcohol if we were having similar data sets related to alcohol?
Planted that question because you'll see that we have that coming up. Alcohol hasn't changed. And when we look at age of onset, what we're finding is there are people who are initiating once they turn 21. Once they're initiating and using, they're continuing to use. And the key is that they're using with increasing frequency.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Oki, go ahead.
I really this figure is really interesting to me, and I love when you come and present, because this age difference of 18 to 20 and then the split of at the legal age, one of particularly with this data set where 20 to 21 with the legal age split, we know that 21 to 25-year-olds are still at that risk development because they're developing, because their brains are still developing, yet with policy where they're still able to legally use. It's really interesting. And this line where we don't see any increased shifts also makes me think there is something, as we see in our compliance rates, where we have really high compliance rates for cannabis use or access to cannabis rates, that access to cannabis use for 18 to 20-year-olds has not shifted across time. It just really, really fascinating. I'm curious about what alcohol shows in the next scene.
So we've always fully recognized that one of the many limitations to anything cross-sectional, and again, that's one of the values of having some longitudinal data, but certainly we can't make any causal connections or causal inferences when people say, wow, use has not increased in this age group. There's so many potential hypotheses behind why that might be. I think that when you look at college campuses and the number that we're addressing cannabis use during incoming first-year student orientation, pre-2012, it was probably very little. And now there's much more systematic addressing cannabis use among incoming students. So there's enough happening in different prevention opportunities, prevention communities that, who knows what could be contributing to all of this. But your point is so important, which is independent of the age split, it is that risk before the age of 25 that still is very, very noteworthy. I will continue. When we look at non-medical use. There's so much going on this slide, but we simply ask people in the past year, we ask how often they've used, and it includes never up to daily. Cohorts 4 through 10 are all significantly higher odds of more frequent cannabis use, meaning if you look at the endorsement of these different categories over time, it's generally shifting to more frequent use. And we see that for sure in that linear trend because of the significant increasing trend over time, that what we are seeing, to Chair Vollendorf's earlier question, is that yes, more people are initiating use, and once they start using, we're seeing it shift to more frequent use. There was a lot of interest in daily use the last time I presented to you. And daily use in 2010, the right side of my screen is blocked by the videos, and I don't know how to move it in Teams, unfortunately. But that it hit a peak in 2010. It's gone down a little bit. You can see the real split that's happened in daily or non-medical use. I'll say again, in 2014, those rates were identical, and it really, really has split. And so certainly the more frequently people use, the more that they would also see elevated risk for things like cannabis use disorder. When we ask about perceived norms, there's decades of research, literally since the 1980s, that show that when people believe that more people use than really use, they're more likely to use themselves. When people misperceive use as being more frequent than it really is, and they're already using, it's associated with their own use and even experience of consequences. Misperceived norms can impact behavior. Our rates are certainly high, and if I go back even to past year use, there we go. So you can see that overall past year, 46.44% reported use in the past year, meaning over half did not. 53.56 did not. So we asked people, what does the typical young adult in Washington do? The right answer would be the typical young adult's not using. You can see on that top row over time, it's really only about 2-3% that correctly say, I don't think the typical person is using cannabis. What we really see is that there are gross misperceptions in people believing that not only does the typical person use cannabis, but the typical person uses on a daily basis. And so the opportunity to correct misperceived norms really is there. In cohort 11, it was just about 18% that used at least weekly, meaning most don't use weekly or more. Yet, almost 2/3, 63.42%, thought the typical person their age uses weekly or more often. So the opportunity, again, to correct misperceived norms is really there.
Do you believe that's just because of the normalization and legalization that's happening, and it's happening more, and we're just, I mean, is there what are your thoughts about that increased perception of daily use?
The alcohol field has done so much in terms of looking at the portrayal of alcohol use in movies and TV shows and ads and social media, exposure to advertisements, public use, neon signs, beer signs, bars, outlet density, you name it. And so we have every reason to think that a lot of the same factors could also contribute here. That if people are either seeing, smelling use publicly, if the narrative, quote, everyone uses weed here, becomes something that people are hearing a lot, it can contribute to those misperceptions for sure.
Thank you.
Of course. We asked if they endorsed any past 30-day use, we asked where people get cannabis. And you see in yellow, anything that's a significant decreasing trend. Anything in blue is a significant increasing trend. Anything in magenta is a newly significant trend from last year's report. Of course, you all know that medical outlets closed, and you can see between 2015 and 2016 where that changes. But it's always interesting to hear the terminology that 18 and 25-year-olds use, because they still might even see retail outlets as, in quotes, dispensaries. So you see a significant decreasing trend in getting it from friends, getting it from someone with a medical card, getting it from a medical dispensary, getting it at a party, or getting it some other way. We've seen a significant increasing trend in giving money to someone to give it to them, getting it from parents with their permission. This remains the third most mentioned source by 18 to 20-year-olds. That became the third most mentioned source in cohort 10, 2023. It stayed the third most mentioned source in 2024. And then, of course, we saw some non-zero numbers in stealing it for the first time. during the pandemic, and those numbers have fluctuated between 0 and very low endorsement, but nevertheless contribute to an increasing trend over time. Among the 21 to 25-year-olds, most sources are going down. The one significant increasing trend is getting it from a retail store. As I move to the finish line here, the only other thing to note is we saw a newly significant cohort by age interaction for getting it from parents with permission. That increase in 18 to 20-year-olds really is pronounced, particularly in the context of no change among 21 to 25-year-olds. We ask about driving after cannabis use. When we had designed this survey, there was one study at the time that suggested that it would take 3 hours to drop below 5 nanograms of THC per milliliter of blood. Of course, as potency has gone up, and as we've learned more, the recommended windows for how long people should wait have really increased. But when we launched, asking in the past 30 days, how many times did you drive within 3 hours of use, was our best proxy for is someone driving under the influence. I remember in 2014, we were really surprised to see that about half of those with past 30-day cannabis use also reported that they'd driven within 3 hours of use. The good news, cohorts 3 through 11 are all significantly different from cohort 1, and there's a significant linear trend such that driving frequency really is decreasing. I really wish I could move. There it is. I can move it. You can see it's still about 32% that report driving within 3 hours of use. And as we look at data from the Washington Traffic Safety Commission about about polysubstance-related traffic fatalities in Washington, of course, the most common 2-drug fatality, alcohol and cannabis, use such the effects overlap. Data like this really do highlight opportunities for prevention. Just a few other findings, and as I get to the end, medical cannabis in the past year, there's a newly significant decreasing trend.
Dr. Kilmer, we have a question from Member Holmes, if we could pause for just a second.
Certainly.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just like the split between the 20-year-olds and 21-year-olds with legal cannabis, do you have any indication whether there's a difference in the rates of driving at 1, 2, and 3 hours as opposed to 0 to 3?
I mean, I always think of the work that Brittany Hultgren does here in Washington. She's one of my colleagues at the University of Washington and would be probably best equipped to answer that. We, of course, didn't answer anything, ask anything beyond that. She had a grant funded by the Centers for Disease Control that looked precisely at those kind of questions. And for one of your future meetings, I would happily introduce you to Dr. Hultgren as a potential presenter.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Medical cannabis in the past year, newly significant decreasing trend over time. And when we look at the model split by age, it's actually going down both for 18 to 20-year-olds and for 21 to 25-year-olds. Perceptions of medical use continue to increase significantly, both a linear trend and the past 8 cohorts are higher than cohort 1. So as actual use decreases, we'll want to keep an eye on those perceptions. When it comes to other substance use, we've seen a significant decreasing trend in alcohol at least once per year, alcohol at least monthly, cigarettes at least once in the past year, pain relievers to get high at least once in the past year, down to the lowest it's been in the 11 years of the study, and heroin use at least once in the past year, down to 0.07%, second only to the complete zero that was in 2022. To me, I think the thing we're most interested in keeping an eye on is right here. Decades of research nationally from the Monitoring the Future study out of the University of Michigan shows that when perceived harm goes down, actual use tends to go up. And when perceived risk goes up, use tends to go down. Historically, we have seen decreasing trends in the perceived risk of using cannabis occasionally, both in terms of physical risk as well as psychological, emotional, or cognitive risk, as well as using regularly. Alcohol, we've typically seen people always saw 5 or more drinks as risky, and we saw an increase over time in 2 drinks every day. For the first time, the perceived physical as well as psychological, emotional, or cognitive risk of occasional cannabis use, there is not a significant trend over time. It's newly non-significant. And for the very first time, the perceived physical risk of regular cannabis use is going up over time. The perceived psychological, emotional, and cognitive risk of regular cannabis use is going up over time. If all that national research holds, it's going to be really interesting to look at what happens next year in reported use, because I'll say again, when risk tends to increase, use tends to decrease, and that's the following year, and that's what we see in national studies. Alcohol, we continue to see a significant increasing trend in the perceived physical and psychological risk of 2 drinks every day. Newly significant, even though it had almost looked like a ceiling effect, is that the perceived physical risk of 5 or more drinks every weekend is newly significant as well. So we invited collaborators and partners to provide input on new items. We got all of that incorporated into the 12th year survey. So we'll have new items added for the 2025 data analysis. We launched our 12th year of data collection at the end of June, and we prepared a press release about the findings you just heard, as well as to provide access to resources, both for parents, caregivers, and guardians who want to discuss cannabis use with an 18 to 25-year-old in their life, as well as for the 18 to 25-year-olds themselves who are hoping to look at and kind of check in about their own use. So with every apology that went a little over, though I know you said you had some extra time, a big thanks again to our partners at the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery, and thanks to all of you at the Liquor and Cannabis Board. With that, I will stop sharing my screen, and if there is any time left, certainly I'm happy to take whatever questions or comments there might be.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's spend a few more minutes asking a few questions, if that's okay. So just going back, first of all, I also want to thank our colleagues at the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery for their partnership with the University of Washington on this incredibly important data set. And it's impressive the number of years that you have data, and super helpful. And looking specifically around perceived perceived threats or problems is super helpful for us in terms of public policy implications and looking at perceived risk and how we can potentially shape policy related to those things. You mentioned a press release. Has that been issued yet, or is that still in the works?
It's taken a while. We just prepared that, and so we're doing draft exchange back and forth.
If you could just make sure we get a link to that when it comes out, I would really appreciate seeing that as well.
Certainly.
Any other, Dr. Oki, go ahead.
Great presentation. I have 2 questions. First, just generally speaking, what is one positive trend that you've seen overall related to alcohol, cannabis, and tobacco from 2024, and one concerning trend overall?
Imagine that any member of our team might pick something different. I do think that it is, I think that people in the prevention community, the public health community really have worked hard. And although we cannot make any causal connections, I certainly think that the decreases that we're seeing in alcohol use and tobacco use, and the decreases that we're seeing reported by the 18 to 20-year-olds would be a reason for promise. And one of the, in quotes, positive trends as you ask about them. I do think a reason for concern as you look at the context of other data sets. Again, if you look at the data from the Washington Traffic Safety Commission, I do think that while it is really, really great that rates of driving within 3 hours of use has gone down, it's still pretty high. The fact that 32% of those with cannabis use endorse driving within 3 hours suggests we may have more work to do there.
And yeah, and then to further expand on that, I also I know that there's so much more research needed to really dig into understanding and further developing our ability to further understand impairments with THC and driving, and developing very specific tests for THC impairment, given like I know member Holmes, we've talked about that as well. I'd love to have that connection, so we can bring your colleague for future discussions. That would be wonderful.
I will happily write introduction with you and Brittany.
That'd be
She
great.
does amazing work, and she's really done some really cutting edge stuff, both about driving impaired under the influence of alcohol, cannabis, or both, and even a person's willingness to be a passenger and ride with someone who's been using.
That would be
Mm.
wonderful.
Interesting.
Member Holmes.
Yeah, just one quick question, and I may be getting too far astray from the study, but what do we know about the rates of dissipation in the bloodstream, alcohol compared to cannabis? Does one trail off sooner than the other?
I do think that is that's certainly outside of the data we've collected. I just know from my colleagues that do this work that while the rate of oxidation from alcohol tends to be fairly constant, that there is a lot more research that needs to be done when you look at different methods of use, different potency, different onset when it comes to cannabis use. With alcohol, the opportunity to generate, for example, a blood alcohol chart with some degree of confidence that a person can reach a zero in X amount of time. They're certainly very, very different substances, and that rate of oxidation being more of a general constant. I think we have more data about that.
Dr. Kilmer, one thing that, and obviously you didn't go over all the questions that are included in the survey, but do you guys ask about quality or about THC concentration at all? And what have we learned about that, if so?
We ask about, and one of the things we've done this year, based on partner and collaborator feedback, we've historically asked about THC levels in products people use. We've actually included a toggle. Dr. Oki was really helpful in helping us explore how to best assess that, so that when people, based on their method of use, can say if it's percentage versus milligrams and so on. But we do have information on not only preferred method of use, typical method of use, and typical concentration of THC as well.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Kilmer this morning? All right, well, thank you very much. And I know that I can say on behalf of my colleague, Kristen Haley, who I should have let in, I apologize, Kristen, that I didn't let you introduce Dr. Kilmer, given your long history of collaboration. But I'm sure I can say, Dr. Kilmer, on behalf of Kristen, myself, and all the board, and thank you for coming. You've been a longstanding partner with the LCB. Your work is important, and we pay attention to it, and it helps shape good public policy as a result. We are in a situation where we both regulate, enforce, and license an industry that we want to do well in this state economically, but we also recognize the potential harms for specific populations, and we pay attention to that, and we appreciate having you here this morning. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much. I got to admit that when you brought up that, wow, so you've known these people for 12 years, I Googled it, and the traditional 12th anniversary gift is silk. So apparently I have to go shopping, and I've got a lot of 28 to 35-year-olds to send some gifts to at this point. But there we are. Thanks. Stay cool out there, and have a good rest of your meeting.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, it's always great to have Dr. Kilmer join us. Our last agenda item is board member and executive assistant reports. Member Holmes, anything for today?
Just as I said last week or the week before, I've forgotten, I have my first ride along tomorrow, and very much looking forward to that. And then on Friday will be my second, so I'll have one with alcohol, and then the Friday one will be cannabis.
Well, I'm sure it'll be a great experience.
It's the other way around. It's cannabis tomorrow. Sorry.
I'm sure it'll be a great experience for you, as it was for me, and appreciate the E&E staff taking the time to spend that time with you. Amen. All right. Anything from Deb or Gretchen?
No, thank you, Chair Bollendrath.
All right. Well, this concludes our board caucus meeting for Tuesday, July 15th. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day. And as Member Holmes said, stay cool today. Drink lots of fluids. Water. Bye.